Hello. I just want to take a moment to see you and feel the energy in the room. My work is all about roots and ancestors, so energy is really important to me. Thank you. I feel you. So what do? I follow, dive with, and tell stories about Black scuba divers who are diving for slave shipwrecks around the world. Last year, I dove off the coast of Key West, or off of Florida. I had a clipboard, a pencil, and a measuring tape. And I helped to map my very first shipwreck. And it was incredible. I still remember the coolness of the water, the absolute silence under the sea. And I remember as I was hovering over my section of the shipwreck, this feeling of peace, of thankfulness, a sense of coming home. I felt like I was a part of a fantasy story. So I want to invite you to take a trip back in time with me to Atlanta, Georgia, circa the late 1970s, early 80s. I was a kid then. I grew up in an apartment complex with my mom. It was just the two of us. My mom was a teacher. She's a reading teacher. And I don't know how the universe matches parents and children, but my mom was the perfect mom for me. I loved reading. I loved books. And my mom had access to books. She used to go to her reading conventions and conferences and come back with boxes and boxes of books. I remember reading some of those books late at night, under the covers in my bed with a flashlight, disappearing into other worlds. I was a huge fantasy book lover. Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time series was my favorite series of all times. I used to yearn for Mrs. Who, Mrs. What's-It, and Mrs. Which to come tapping on my window and invite me to go out and help save the universe. I had a really big imagination. There were no limits. But as I grew older, I began to notice a few things. First, I noticed that there were very few girls in the books that I read who were actual heroes in their stories. And as I got even older, I began to notice that there were no Black people in these books, ever. Like no Black people whatsoever. I realized that the books that had Black people in them were often focused on pain and tragedy. I used to read those books and come away feeling sad and angry. I think even as a kid, I understood that there was a prevailing narrative about Black people in the world. And that narrative was seen through a really distorted lens, a lens that emphasized, almost to the exclusion of everything else, struggle, pain, and trauma. But 2 years ago, I happened to be visiting the the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History here in DC. And I got a taste of what that narrative could be, of how the stories of Black people could be told almost like a song, with a refrain and a crescendo, with an ending that acknowledged the pain, but that moved beyond it. The museum tells the story of the 12.5 it's an estimated number, 12.5 million Africans who were enslaved and brought over to the Americas on approximately 35,000 ships. Of those 35,000 ships, 500 to 1,000 are estimated to have wrecked. And approximately, well, we don't know, but hundreds of thousands of African lives might have been lost in that voyage. A huge part of history is just missing. Because of those 500 to 1,000 ships, only a handful have been found today, and only one of those ships has been properly documented. But the museum also tells the story of a group of predominantly Black scuba divers. They're part of a group called Diving with a Purpose, who decided to take up this mantle and to search for those missing slave ships. When I saw their exhibit, I was transported to a place of hope and possibility. I felt like these people had the potential to tell what's a painful part of African American history in a completely new way, and to tell it from a loving perspective. Tell it from a perspective that allowed deep wounds to heal, that allowed the possibility of closure. So Diving with a Purpose today is a part of a larger collaboration of organizations called the Shipwrecks Project. The Shipwrecks Project is hosted by the African American Museum and George Washington University. And so the divers are now diving with historians and archaeologists, and they are looking for wrecks in Africa, in the Caribbean, and the Americas. I'd love to introduce you to a couple of those folks, and these are the people that I'm following. Oh, there we go. So this is Kamal. He's American. He's one of the lead divers. He's a pilot, a retired engineer, and at age 64, he teaches power yoga. This is Gisela. Gisela is Mozambican. She's also a diver. She speaks 5 languages, including Swedish and Italian, and she runs the swankiest hotel on Mozambique Island. This is Jay. Jay is American. He's a diver. He's a lead diver and a dive training coordinator. Jay is about 6'5". He weighs about 240 pounds, and he has a laugh, I swear, a laugh just like Popeye the Sailor Man. Starts in the throat, and then it just goes for miles. Here are Cesar and Celso. They are Mozambican. They're 26 years old, and they're best friends. They've known each other since high school. And they are 2 of only 3 maritime archaeologists in all of Mozambique. This is Samira. I love her. She is 18 years old. She just turned 18 in December. She's a diver, and she's super smart, and she plans to attend Harvard or Yale next year. These are just a few of the people that I'm following and telling stories about. And they are the new actors who I think just by their very presence, by being who they are shifting the narrative of who Black people are in the world. So today, I feel like, it's more than I feel like, I think I am a part of a fantasy novel. I'm a character now. I get to dive off the coast of countries with white sand beaches. I get to wrestle with a dark history and help set it right. I'm helping to free the minds and hearts and souls of a people who've been grounded in pain and debilitating stereotypes. I'm helping to resurrect memories from the depths and finding valuable treasure in the form of stories and bringing that to the surface. I think about another little girl somewhere in the future, and maybe she's reading a book late at night under the covers, maybe not with a flashlight, but maybe she's got her smartphone or the Google glasses or something. But she's able to imagine the feeling of the waters. She's able to feel the coolness on her skin. She's able to behold this enormous history that's buried in the sands. But this time, she knows the names of those ships. She knows the names of the people. Not the slaves, but the people whose lives were lost. And maybe she falls in love just a little bit with some of the characters, including some of the Black characters in the story. And maybe she is inspired by them so much that she actually yearns for them to come knocking at her window and to invite her to come save the world. Or maybe even better, this girl decides to swap out her pajamas and don a wetsuit and dive under the sea and become a part of the story. Because maybe innately, she knows that the transformative power of storytelling is grounded in the me and the we versus always in the he, the she, the they. That's me. That's me again. And that's me. Thank you.